Good morning, dear hearts. Okay, we are starting a brand new special thought section this morning. It is What is the Ego? If you've not yet done so, please subscribe. So I have an acronym in my book that I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but I do like it. I'm going to share it. And it is EGO, Earth Guides Only. I think we've all heard of the usual one used for ego is edging God out. Both of these are true. We can look at them in two different ways, but they're both stating the idea that the ego is a thought that is opposed to what is true and real, and it is opposed to God. The first paragraph in this special thought bears reading this morning. And then I'll talk a little bit more about it and then go into today's actual lesson. And then during the course of the next 10 days, come back to this special thought. There's a lot of really good information here. What is the ego starts out by the first paragraph. The ego is idolatry, the sign of limited and separated self, born in a body, doomed to suffer, and to end its life in death. It is the will, air quotes, that sees the will of God, true will, as enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof, again, air quotes, that strength is weak and love is fearful, life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. It is insane, which is the next line in here. The ego is insane. It is that upside down viewpoint of this world, and we are offered it as one choice, its will, the ego's will, or we can choose the will of God, which is 180 degrees. How many times have I said that? Different from this viewpoint. And it is not insane. It is true. It is real. The world that is experienced when we choose to simply turn away from the ego and not believe in it. In the text, there's a wonderful line. I may not be quoting it directly, but it really says that to stop believing in the ego, simply stop believing in it, is how the ego will disappear from us. The ego is dependent on our validation of it. When we remove our validation of the ego, and that means to remove our constant vigilance and belief in it, then it goes away. It just goes away. We are not feeding it. We are not supporting it. There is no need for it to be. The ego is all about darkness, and it's about the crucifixion and ways to make us cower and feel small and little. And when we stop believing in that and we turn away from it, it is simply going to disappear. And what will be experienced in place of it is peace will be forever restored to the holy minds which God created as his Son, his dwelling place, his joy, his love, completely his, completely one with him. Now today's lesson is 331, and it is, there is no conflict, for my will is yours, and yours is capitalized. It is speaking of and to God. There are two previous lessons back in part one of the workbook that really speak to this one. One is that God's will for me is perfect happiness, and that's lesson 101. And then it follows up with lesson 102 that I share God's will for me for perfect happiness. I share that. I'm going to vote for that. I'm going to vote for perfect happiness. That's what God wants for me. Yes, I will agree to that. There is no conflict, for my will is yours. When I align my will with God's, there's no conflict. There's only agreement. And in agreement, there is no conflict. Yes, I agree with that. Conflict comes from opposing viewpoints. When I decide that I want for me exactly what my Father wants for me, conflict has disappeared. In fact, it was really never there. It was simply waiting for me to acknowledge that there's no conflict. The lesson has a wonderful line, and it says, conflict is sleep and peace awakening. Death is illusion, life eternal truth. There's no opposition to your will. There is no conflict, for my will is yours. And the lesson concludes with saying that forgiveness shows us that God's will is one. Forgiveness is the key. Forgiveness is the key that opens up the prison gates, the doors that we have closed upon ourselves, separating us seemingly from God's will. But forgiveness is that key that opens up every door and allows us to truly know ourself and our brother as one again, free of conflict, because we are all in agreement. So that is pretty much it for today. So we have a new special thought and our lesson for today. And tomorrow is more about fear and forgiveness. So I hope you'll be here. Please like, please share, please subscribe, and please comment. Namaste.